Day 109 in a nutshell. One should not relate Hilchos or Toelos to someone who will act contrary to halacha and not take his case to Bezdin. The end result. In day 107, we discussed the case of Mr. Stein, who was on the verge of hiring Mr. Kriegler Construction to build an extension into his home. Mr. Willenstein was permitted to warn Mr. Stein of Mr. Kriegler's dishonest business practices, provided that he fulfilled 5 conditions of Hilchos Litoelos. What if the contract had already been signed and work had already begun? Can Mr. Willenstein now inform Mr. Stein that Mr. Kriegler is going to ask him for the balance of the money and then disappear for months without finishing the job? On the surface, it would seem so. Why not warn someone that he is dealing with a dishonest person so that he can take the necessary steps to protect himself? Once again, the Chofetz Chaim advises us to proceed cautiously. Mr. Stein might react to the news by saying, "Thank you for warning me. If Mr. Krieger does ask me for the balance before he finishes the job, then I'm going to have witnesses there when I make payment and have him sign a document that the work will be completed within 10 days from when the payment was made." This would be an excellent strategy, and Mr. Willenstein would have done a mitzvah by forewarning Mr. Stein. However, Mr. Stein's reaction might be altogether different. "Thanks for the tip. As soon as Krieger asks me for the balance, I'll fire him and find someone else to finish the job. No one's going to play games with me." This would be contrary to halacha. If a contract was already been signed for the entire job, neither party would have the right to break the contract without going before Bezdin and presenting his arguments to them. Bezdin would hear the claims of both parties and then determine who's right. If Mr. Willenstein knows that Mr. Stein may act against halacha and break the contract without going to Bezdin, then he should not inform him of Mr. Krieger's past history. Chofetz Chaim makes a very interesting point. Even if 2 valid witnesses know that of Mr. Krieger's dishonesty and know that Bezdin would allow Mr. Stein to break the contract, they would not be allowed to inform Mr. Stein if they know that he will break the contract without going to Bezdin, since breaking the contract without Bezdin's authorization is a sin. To inform Mr. Stein would be to aid a sinner. There is a well-known story of a famous Talmid Chacham who we will call Reb David, who became involved in a disagreement over money. The 2 sides agreed to go to Bezdin to resolve the matter. Upon hearing the arguments of both sides, the Ab Bezdin rose, went to a bookcase, and withdrew a sefer written by none other than Reb David. He turned to a certain page and showed Reb David that in an actual case, Reb David had ruled that the argument he himself had just put forth was incorrect. Reb David was honest and God-fearing. The problem is that when someone is personally involved in something, it is virtually impossible for him to see matters clearly. His reasoning will automatically bend in his own favor. No one who signs a contract should ever break it without speaking to a Rav or going to Bezdin, even if the person considers himself a Talmid Chacham. He should realize that his reasoning may be influenced by his personal interests. When it comes to money matters, there is simply too much room for error. Again, in a nutshell, one should not relate Hilchos Litoelos to someone who will act contrary to halacha and not take his case to Bezdin. Have a wonderful day.